And go. Hi, welcome to a news episode of Sports Talk Central. I'm your host, Adeep Mahmood, with my normal co-host Hunter, and today we'll be talking a little bit some baseball and some NFL news today. So let's first start with the news that happened last week, this week, which was the World Series. The Braves beat the Houston Astros in six. So there's a lot to unpack there from Atlanta actually winning something. Um, but I what
This
I
is
wanted
curse is over.
Yeah, but what I wanted to do, because I know that we've made our points on the World Series on the past few episodes with this matchup, or in last episode, I kind of wanted to phrase this more on what, like, you're Nationals fan, so you would know a little bit more about the what do you think the Braves could be like next year with Freddie Freeman being under contract, and I'll talk a little bit about Houston, and then we'll probably do the same thing with Orioles and Nationals. But yeah, what are your thoughts on what the Braves are going to do this
Well,
offseason?
aren't they potentially going to lose Freddie Freeman because he is a free agent? I've seen a lot of rumors saying that the Yankees
Free
want to go get him. That's
He's
not.
a free agent.
Yeah, he is. That's not. So I've seen the rumors that the Yankees want to go get him. That's not surprising because the Yankees are in on almost every big name free agent. That I think would be a pretty big loss for them, considering how great he was in that World Series and the playoffs. They'll get Acuna back. That's huge. Their pitching is still going to be good next year. They honestly should probably win the NL East again next year, in my opinion. Do you really trust the Mets to do anything?
Yeah,
No.
speaking of the Mets. I'm putting in another topic relating to the Mets and the GM search. We'll briefly talk about that.
Okay.
Uh,
Yeah. And then
so
the Phillies, I mean, they didn't really do anything this year. They haven't done much since Bryce Harper went there and all their other signings. The Marlins stink. The Nationals are doing a retool / rebuild. Um,
how they retool?
yeah, it's going to be a few year. It's a couple year retool. I think is probably what it's going
Yeah,
to
it's not like a rebuild is what the Orioles have been doing the last few years. A
be. Yeah.
retool is what the Yankees were doing in 2016, what the Nationals are most likely doing, what the Red Sox are doing. So there's different definitions of that. So
Mhm. Yeah, for sure. So, I think the Braves are going to be really good next year. They have Freed coming back. They have, I'm trying to remember. I'm sure they'll have what's
yeah,
face.
should
I
be
already mentioned that. I think Charlie Morton is under contract next year,
yeah,
right?
yeah. He signed an extension.
That he'll be back. So their rotation will be good.
Soroka will be back. Well, we'll see if he can finish a full season.
Yeah, their hitting is going to be good. Though again, they're going to have a big hole to fill if Freddie Freeman does leave. I don't know
I
if
doubt it though. I doubt it.
yeah,
He's sort of
he is
be
he's
there
supposed to
for
be the
that.
franchise. That's the thing. He's been there forever. It was nice to see him win. I know I always compare him to looking like Buzz from Home Alone, but it was
One of the nicest people in baseball.
yeah, he is. And Atlanta, they were finally able to break that curse. You were texting me a deep. You wouldn't believe it until that last pitch was thrown,
Yeah,
just because of
even
what.
with Soler, like even when after Swanson, and by the way, how badly do you think Diamondbacks fans feel? Because they drafted Dansby Swanson #1 overall, then within a year and a half, they traded him to Atlanta for Shelby Miller. So not a good move there. Not a good move there.
Yeah,
But
no,
yeah. But I wasn't so sure because the Astros still have good offense. Like it, even when Freeman hit that double to get that lead to 6, I was like, if there's a team that will blow this lead, it's a team from Atlanta. So until they get that 27th out, I'll buy into it.
that was the baseball version of the 28-3 lead, except please don't blow it.
Yeah.
But it was again, it was good. It's nice to see Houston lose. I saw Dusty Baker is going to be returning though for
Yeah.
that next year, and then no doubt, I guess I'll let you take over here. So they have some big decisions for this year, and I think Correa is up if I'm not mistaken.
Ariel got his option picked up.
Yeah, but Correa is going to be a hot commodity in free agency.
Yeah, and I think it's gonna be pretty interesting to see what these CBA negotiations do. I think my prediction, and when we get to the Orioles and Nationals, kind of might go into that part there, but pretty much those second tier, smaller tier A free agents, I could see them signing a lot quicker and having that knowing where they're going to be, and then seeing some of these. I think you're going to see very few between now and December when it's going to be a lockdown for sure for maybe 1 or 2 weeks I don't think you're going to see a lot of big names signed then. I think you're going to see a lot of these smaller names signed within the next month, and don't be shocked if there's some mid-major trade. So for me, with Houston, I'll say that Correa, the $300 million question is Correa, because Correa wants 10 years. I think he wants at least 300 million. 10 years. The big thing for him this offseason was he's always had injury concerns. So this year, it was sort of like if he could stay healthy, then I think he was going to raise his stock. I don't think he will return with Houston. They tried signing him in the offseason. They tried, I think it was 120 over 6 years, and then or over five, and then Correa said no, that's not what he wants. I think it'll probably be around 8 years, 210 or some, at least 30 million a year, at least 8 years, 30 million a year, because Trevor Story, we don't. I think his market isn't going to be great. One of these shortstops market isn't going to be great. Corey Seager and also Kyle Seager are now both free agents, so it'll be pretty interesting to see if the Seager brothers go to the same team. Um, Javi Baez, forgotten. He's a free agent. Marcus Semien.
Well, if the Mets want to pay him, we'll see though.
Yeah, and we'll get to the Mets a little bit right after this topic, but that's where it starts because Verlander is not coming back. Greinke not coming back, but you still have Lance McCullers Jr., who's pretty good. He's there for the long term. He's their ace. You have Framber Valdez. You got Luis Garcia, who might be Rookie of the Year. That's your top three. Now the good thing is you have guys like Eduardo Rodriguez, Zach Davies, Jose Urquidy, who's in with the Astros right now. Some of those second tier guys, we'll see if they go after those guys. But it'll be interesting to see if they get Correa, then I think they might get a couple of second tier starters and then fill out that rotation. And they're still a dangerous team because that AL West is not, because Oakland letting go of Bob Melvin, that division is Houston's for the next few years. The Mariners, until their prospects actually develop, uh, they might pose a threat, but I don't think they would right now. The Angels don't seem to have pitching. Um, did you know? I didn't realize this until like a couple weeks after the MLB draft. They had, I think it was like 20 round. It was like a 20-round draft. The Angels drafted 20 pitchers. Like they did not draft no offensive players. It was all pitchers. So that goes to tell you, and they should stop trading away pitchers because a few of their good pitchers that they've drafted are now with the Orioles. So that's pretty interesting and they only had Dylan Bundy to show for it. But the and then so it is gonna be interesting to see what they do. It is Houston's division, like I said, for next few years. But if Correa signs, then we'll see what they might get a second tier guy. If Correa doesn't sign, then they might go after a big name pitcher. It'll be pretty interesting to see. And there's some breaking news on Bleacher Report. Is Houston has made the Correa a 5-year, $160 million deal. So we'll see if he takes
Probably not going to work. That's a little low.
5 years. No, that's what 30
160. I feel like he's going to get like 200 though.
No, that's no 5 years, 160. That's 132 million a year.
Yeah.
Yeah, I could see that happening. So we'll see what they do. But that's pretty much where we're going to go there. And before we go to Orioles Nationals, let's talk about how badly the Mets have effed up this GM search. I mean, to recap, Theo Epstein said no. The two guys from the Brewers, David Stearns and someone else, said no. They had a bunch of people say no, and apparently, so they had Raquel Ferreira from the assistant GM with the Red Sox. Apparently, she has recently said no, and then they recently reached out to the Orioles assistant GM Sig Mejdal, and Sig Mejdal said no. So we're now.
No one wants to be with the Mets.
Who wants to deal with Steve Cohen? Is the exact term.
And Sandy Alderson too.
Yeah, so now they are literally about 4 or 5 days away from having Sandy Alderson represent them, and apparently
that's disgusting.
And here's what's worse. So right now it seems like the guy, and this is who I think they'll end up hiring. because the Orioles went through this whole thing with the GM, with the manager in 2012, where, or yeah, no, sorry, their GM in 2012, where they had a bunch of people say no, and
Mhm.
then so they ended up with Dan Duquette, who at that point in time had not been a general manager in about 10 years. So going back to that memory, I think the Mets will end up hiring I think it's Bobby Epler, the former GM of the Angels. And this was, I think he was the GM of the Angels until I think for like a few years. I think he signed Otani.
Mhm.
But we've talked about, I think I referred a couple minutes ago, the Angels, not so good. Not so good. So Bobby Epler, managing the Mets, that might be the choice. Like they might have to go. Like, do you think that's going to be someone like that, like a failed GM having to take that job?
They might have to be honest.
Because I can't think of who else would take that job. I mean, you can't go the young ups. Like you can't go Moneyball because Billy Bean said no. Theo Epstein said no.
Yeah.
David, maybe Brian, maybe a few other assistants of the Mets, of the A's said no. You can't go young analytical because you can't go off the Houston GM tree because David Stearns, who was with Houston, said no. David Stern's assistant said no. The Orioles' assistant GM said no. Raquel Ferreira, who's one of the better minds, and the assistant Chaim Bloom, and was kept, by the way. Chaim Bloom actually kept her. So if you want to know if she can be a good GM, a guy like Chaim Bloom, who was GM of the Rays, kept her. So that should tell you a little bit how good she can be. And Theo Epstein liked her apparently. So she said no. So at this point, you have to, and by the way, they still have to get a manager. Like Rojas was fired. Like like their manager was fired. So they got to hire GM. They might have to ditch president of baseball operations. So and then they got to handle the free agents. And are they going to give a qualifying offer to Conforto? I mean, this is just my perspective from an American League fan. But what are your thoughts from a Nats fan, from the Mets GM search, and they're in
I mean,
general?
yeah, my thoughts are that it's hilarious. That's really just it, man. I mean, it's that team is so dysfunctional. It's been that way since the beginning of time. You have all this stuff going on during the season with Mets fans booing Javi Baez, and then he's basically giving to the fans after. Then you have Steve Cohen going on Twitter ranting to reporters and saying a bunch of other stuff. If they're just a nice, old, good jumbled mess, is what I like to call it.
Yeah, and you would imagine getting a guy like Steve Cohen, who's one of the richest owners, with Lindor and Alonso and those guys. You have a good roster. I just feel like they're making it. I just feel like with
Yeah.
Steve Cohen came from a financial stocks background, and I think that he is so used to a certain leadership style
Mm-hmm.
where he can kind of you can treat the people, you don't have to treat your employees as people. Like they're not stocks, they're people. And I don't think he's realized that. I think he thinks because he's rich and he's a baseball fan that he thinks people are going to like his approach. And I think that it's not a good approach he's using. I think it's a bad approach. I think it is a little bit of dehumanizing people, and you're in the wrong industry. I get it that he has money, and granted, some of the money he's gotten is from sketchy reasons. So, but I think that he thinks micromanaging, I'll make it short. He thinks micromanaging people is the best way because it worked for him in one area. So he thinks it'll work for him in another area. And
Mm-hmm.
he's finding out pretty quickly it doesn't work like that. He can't like
Yeah.
he had he hired Jared Porter as the GM, and then Jared Porter had domestic violence charges. Brought in Zach Scott. Zach Scott has a DUI. I mean, he's messing this up. I think that, and then Sandy Alderson is too much of an old head in baseball. He's not
Yeah.
a
He's a
younger.
goon.
Yeah, I mean, do you think at this point, if you're a Mets fan, and let's say if you're a Nats fan as well, like what are your thoughts on this? And I kind of refer to it. Do you think they go in and just go to a guy like Jeff Luhnow?
I mean, maybe. I mean, but like, is he gonna say no?
I mean, does he have a choice? I mean, what other opportunities does he have to get into baseball?
Yeah, that's a good point.
And I think so. I think that's kind of where I am with that. So it'll be pretty interesting to see. I mean, and then the segue. I mean, Sig Mejdal, one of the guys, is the assistant GM of the Orioles. So now we're going to kind of go into the Orioles Nationals preview. What do you expect from the Nationals this offseason?
Honestly, man, they're gonna spend some money somewhere. Where that's going to be, I don't know. They have some gaping holes. Do they want to address the pitching a little bit? Do they want to go out and get an infielder? I mean, shortstop, they probably need to go out and get someone there.
Do
I
you think
wouldn't be surprised if they threw some money at one of the top shortstops.
Marcus Simeon?
Huh?
Marcus Simeon.
Yeah, that makes sense. They're not going to go after Correa. They don't have the money for that. I don't think they have
Trevor
the money.
Story, Baez.
Story, I could see Baez maybe, but I think he's going to cost too much as well. They're going to want someone there for at least the next few years. They don't really have anyone in the organization that can step up and do that. So
Get Turner, get Trey Turner, but yeah, you know what happened there.
they lost, so I make feel a little bit better. I don't think they'll bring Max back. I know he's a free agent. I just would not expect that to happen. It's I don't really know, man. This is the first offseason where I honestly don't have a good answer for you.
Do you think they offload? They try to offload Patrick Corbin or Strasburg or one of those guys or another.
He's going to come back. Corbin, maybe, but also who's taking that contract? No one. Not many take that deal.
Yeah, no, and yeah. So going back to the Orioles, I mean, I think the Nationals. I think they can make some good moves. We'll see what they do. I mean, I didn't ask about Chris Bryant, but I don't think that I don't think the Nationals would go after Chris Bryant. Do you think?
I don't think so either, to be honest.
Yeah, and then do you think? I mean, it can't hurt to bring back Schwarber, right? In the event he doesn't really.
Schwarber makes sense. Actually, that I would love actually if they did bring him back. I think it makes a ton of sense. He really loved it here. I know he loved it in Boston. Do you think the Red Sox would re-sign him?
I think that depending on the cost, because I think that because the thing about if you look at the Yankees and Red Sox, the Yankees are spend a lot of money on guys but the value is not there, like Joey Gallo, right? He's it's Giancarlo Stanton. The Red Sox, I think, are smarter. I think that because you look at like Kike Hernandez wasn't getting paid a lot of money, big impact. Hunter Renfroe, big impact, not a lot of money. I think if Schwarber does kind of fall into that category of you could sign him to a short term deal and then he provides a big impact. I don't know. It depends because he's not the best defender in like either in the outfield or at first base. So he's strictly a DH. So I don't know how much value they have. And besides, the Red Sox have JD Martinez. So can JD Martinez and Kyle Schwarber coexist on the same team? That's going to be pretty tricky. So I think they could re-sign him. The Nats, I could see re-signing him because I, he's not that bad of a left fielder. I don't. I mean, you've seen him more. I don't know. You might have seen him more. So
His fielding is okay. It's not his strong suit. You know what his strong suit is.
Yeah, hitting home runs, pretty much.
Yes.
Yeah. So it'll be interesting what they do there. I mean, pitching wise, he should be good. I mean, I could see.
They'll have Strasburg leading the way. They'll have Corbin now with Max. Oh, obviously they'll have that. Oh, Jesus Christ! What the on his name, because they just
Dodgers guy. Dodgers guy.
Yeah. They'll have him in the rotation next year.
You have Ruiz at catcher.
Yep. He will. I'm
Josiah
sure.
Gray. Josiah Gray.
Yep, Josiah Gray. It'll be Josiah Gray, probably Patrick Corbin, probably Steven Strasburg. After that, though, what are you doing? Joe Ross.
Do you go after a guy like Eduardo Rodriguez?
That makes sense. I mean, they need another pitcher.
Yeah, I mean, and I think he played pretty well, especially coming off what he went through like in 2020 with his heart issues. He played pitcher really well. I don't know if the Red Sox will keep him. Zach Davies isn't like there's a lot of potentially there's some nice veteran starters that could be nice value signings.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and I mean, Craig Kimbrell could have been a good bullpen move for any team, but he got his option picked up. So it'd be pretty interesting to see what happens. Uh, I'm gonna move to the Orioles. With the Orioles, they've pretty much jettisoned a bunch of people. I mean, they
Mm,
don't have. So the big thing is that the Orioles' number one prospect and number one prospect in baseball, who is with the Orioles, Adley Rutschman, is a catcher. He is
mm,
close to the majors. The Orioles also have 0 catchers under 40 men right now. So there's a theory out there that Adley Rutschman might start the year in Baltimore. Um, I think he will. I think that they might sign a Sandy Leone, a Robinson Chirinos, a Kurt Suzuki, kind of like a because in 2019 when they had Matt Wieters, they signed Greg Zahn to a veteran deal. It's like a short-term, 1-year deal, and then they brought up Matt Wieters. So they had that veteran and rookie. I think they'll do the same thing here, whether it's Sandy Leone or Chirinos or Manny Pena or someone like that. Tucker Barnhart was an option, but he got traded to another team from the Reds. Can't remember who it was, but that's the first thing. A few other pitchers. Hunter Harvey got claimed by the Giants. Not too worried about that one because the guy in the last 3 years has pitched like 23 innings total. Like he is a walking. He I think he has spent more time in the past since he's been in the Orioles organization for 8 years. He was a first round pick in 2014, 2013 actually. He has spent about way more time on the injured list or disabled list, whatever you're going to call it,
mm.
than he has in the majors. Like Tommy John, shoulder surgery, all this other stuff. He's an injury-prone player. Whatever you need to space. The Orioles have like 8 or 9 guys they would like to protect. So we'll see what they do there. For me, I'll break this to Orioles fans. You're not getting Carlos Correa.
Yeah,
You're not getting
that's just not going to happen. Yeah.
and I know people are going to say, "Well, Mike Elias, the GM for the Orioles, was the scout that discovered Correa." Here's why I don't think they're going to get Correa. Um, the problem with getting a big time free agent is that the Orioles right now they have a ton of prospects that are nearing to the major leagues, and you don't want to get a guy that's going to block off these guys. And they have a couple of shortstop prospects in Double A that ended the year in Double A, and Jordan Westburg and Gunnar Henderson. You do not want like as great as Correa is, if you think, and then they got Kobe Mayo who's in Delmarva. By the way, Kobe Mayo is 19 years old. Apparently, he has had exit velos of 111 and 112 miles an hour, and
Jeez.
he's 19 years old.
Jeez.
Like he's like no, like think Chris Bryant. He's like Chris Bryant size. He's like 6'5", 215. He like think Austin Riley. Like if he turns out to be an Austin Riley type player, great. But he's like that type of guy, great arm. So you have multiple prospects in your shortstop, third base. You have some nice advanced approach hitters with Connor Norby and Terran Vavra at second. You throw Carlos Correa, you throw Trevor Story in that mix, it begins to mess things up because you have guys you don't want to trade. But you have 5, 6 players for 3 positions. You put Correa there, now it's even less. So yeah, so you want to sign worthwhile players, but you don't want to block off certain guys before you know whether they're good or not, and that's a tricky thing. So I don't see them going after big time shortstop. I would love for them to go after Chris Taylor from the Dodgers because he's a guy that you could move
He's
him around.
a good fielder and he's a good hitter.
Yeah, and he's like one of those utility guys that you could move around, and offensively, he's a starter because no, most of the time when you get these utility guys, they're not starters, they're bench players, but they give you that versatility. Chris Taylor is one of these guys that can give you that versatility. I think they're more likely to go after Marvin Gonzalez to do that for you, but we'll see there. But they pretty much got the 40 man down to 27 to protect guys from the 40 man, get some Rule 5 picks. I think that They offer some value. I think they're going to try to get guys in that second tier. I would love to see Eduardo Rodriguez come back to Baltimore because you got John Means pretty much as your ace, Bruce Zimmerman as your two. But after that, it's not really anything there. I thought Chris Ellis was going to be starting, but he was one of the guys released. He might come back. Zach Davies is an interesting name. So there's some options there. John Gray, I wouldn't mind seeing him in an Orioles uniform. They got some options there. So I would expect the Orioles to go after these second, third tier guys. Like Matt Harvey might be an option here as well. Um, I think I expect them to go after some veteran infielders, but mainly guys with versatility, like guys like Amarin Gonzalez, guys like a Leury Garcia who can play multiple positions. Bullpen, I could expect them maybe get one or two bullpen additions. I like the idea of Andrew Miller. He's up there in age, but he hasn't been the same Andrew Miller he was a few years ago, but he can provide a veteran presence. So that's where I am there. The Trey Mancini question is going to be huge. I think Anthony Santander, I would not mind trading him.
Did I see Trey Mancini get engaged this week or
Yeah,
something?
he did. He got engaged, and then it was
Isn't she a reporter?
yeah. She worked for she worked in Madison for Orioles and Nationals. She covered both teams.
Interesting. Yeah, I saw that on Twitter. I thought I would mention that.
Yeah, no. But yeah, and apparently that's how they met because she was working for the Orioles and then Mancini obviously was playing. But the big thing is that Trey Mancini, if you take away the story that he had, he was really an average player. And I don't think that I think his trade value is not that much that you want to trade him. But at the same time, he's not a guy that you want to give a long-term deal to, not like a 4-year deal. I think you could give him like a 2-year, $20 million deal, and then kind of bridge the gap for a guy for a Kobe Mayo, for a Heston Kjerstad, who looks like he's going to play next, develop really go through a bunch of levels next year, but I that's the tricky thing because you can't trade him because he's not going to have that much value. You can't non-tender him because that's devastating. But he's not a guy, you know what I'm saying, right? He's not a guy that you sign for 4 years. Like he's a guy that you sign for two and
Mm.
then hope that someone else replaces it. So it's gonna be pretty interesting what they do there. Then you got Santander. We'll see if they do him. I hope they trade him. I don't. I think he's not part of the future. There's some other guys, so it'd be pretty interesting. I would expect a few surprise moves for seeing who would be let go because they definitely need to start trimming the fat off this roster for sure, and start bringing up these younger guys. So it's going to be pretty interesting to see what they do. We'll learn more about it, and I think that I wouldn't be shocked if you see them make a trade or sign a player. So my prediction pretty much is Mancini gets extended on a 2-year deal, and then they'll pretty much use him to bridge the gap for the next guy. And I think that they might be they might be trying to get either Heston Kjerstad because they might find two or three outfielders that can play that might be better defensively. Heston Kjerstad to me is he's kind of like a Schwarber, right? Think Kyle Schwarber, like 30 to 40 home run power, passable defense, and I think that was the comp that MLB gave him during the draft. So
Mm.
he's like a guy that maybe you put him in as your DH because you want his bat in the lineup, but you might want another better defensive player in the outfield, or maybe you put Kobe Mayo in the DH one day in a few years because you want Gunnar Henderson and Jordan Westberg in the infield, or maybe you trade one of Henderson or Westberg and then put Mayo at third, and then put one of Connor Norby and Terran Vavra as your DH. So really, I think that Trey Mancini's place is really meant to be a placeholder for someone else. So I think it might be a short-term extension there. So we'll move on to actually let's actually go Odell Beckham pretty quick.
Woo! That was.
Yeah, what do you thought?
Did the Steelers break the Browns? My column. What a funny game that was, by the way. Kevin Stefanski was a coward on a couple of those plays. Mike Tomlin probably had the dumbest fake field goal call I've ever seen in my life, and they still won without a kicker in the second half. So, Baker Mayfield probably, I don't even, nice little dumb celebration after a 5-yard rush, and then Jarvis Landry fumbles the very next play. It was just, you know, I laughed when he did that on screen. I just laughed. I'm like, dude, you're looking like an idiot, and then you haven't even done anything all game. You have one okay run, and then you just get fired up, and then you just lose the game on the next play. So, um, it was funny. It's always just great when Browns fans, it just blows up in their faces because they've been talking trash all offseason to Steelers fans, saying like, oh, this is the year you go in the basement and all that. Who's in the basement halfway through the season?
That would be the Browns.
That would be the Browns. You have one playoff win in your 20-plus years of existence since going back to Cleveland. You have no room to talk, oh, my God, you beat the Steelers in a playoff game. You can go hang that banner in your stupid room saying, we beat the Steelers one time. Now you would go to Cleveland and the big brother won. So it was funny, man. I'm sick and tired of Cleveland fans just thinking that, like, it's their year to go to the Super Bowl or something. They're not that good. Their defense is awful, by the way. It's just it's garbage. And they're probably gonna be a better team in the long term, but for this year, no Odell makes their offense a lot less scarier because now it's Jarvis Landry for catching the ball, and who else? Peoples Jones.
So I'm just going to share. I just want to share a cover. Do you see this cover?
Yes.
Yeah. Yep. That's all I gotta say. That's all I gotta say. That's all I gotta say there. So, if you want to talk about Browns fans getting overhyped, that's an example. SI cover gone completely wrong. So I mean that's gonna be pretty. I mean this is not. I think to me, here's where I have a few thoughts. Well, let me first go to this. Stefanski was with the Vikings when Stephon Diggs wanted out, right?
Yes.
Okay, so Kevin Stefanski led offense, big play receiver. He wanted out, and he was traded. Stefanski goes to another team. Odell Beckham, big play receiver. He wants out.
Was he Winston Diggs? When did Diggs? Was it 2 years ago?
2 years, yeah.
Wait, when did Stefanski? Oh, wait, was he Cleveland last season? Was his first year?
Yeah. Last year was his first year.
Okay, you might be right. Yeah, I think he was there then. I think you're right.
So isn't that interesting that he's at 2 stops, 2-star receivers basically are unhappy? I mean, granted, it's nothing bad on him.
I also think, Odell and Baker, it might have been Baker that was like the big culprit there. I don't know. I don't know the whole details, but it seemed like they were never on the same page when they played. I always love when Browns fans got mad when Tomlin when they talked about Landry and Odell, but yet Odell never did a thing against the Steelers. Like, he had one reception for 6 yards on Sunday.
He didn't really do anything against the Ravens either. I mean,
he never did.
I mean, I don't know how, but he owes like 18 years out support to
after he left the Giants, man. Like, he fell from grace hard.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, and he definitely. So it's gonna be pretty interesting. I mean, I'll give you my quick thoughts are, this was not going to work.
Oh, and where do you think he's gonna go? Is the thing?
Yeah, and that's where our next part is going to be, and that's So here's the situation here, right? So the context is they put him on waiver. They tried to trade him. They couldn't trade him. Yeah. So what they did was they agreed to shorten his contract to about 7.25. And then what they're going to do is they're going to put him on waivers. Mm-hmm. And with the waivers, if someone claims him, either they have to pay the entire 7.25 remaining, or they can negotiate with the Browns, so the Browns pay a smaller percentage. If he goes through the waiver wire, no one wants him, Odell Beckham becomes a free agent. Now here's where it's interesting. If he becomes a free agent, Odell Beckham now has to now Cleveland is on the books for all of 7.25 million. Wow. So this is why I'm saying where he ends up, you have to understand the context. So if someone claims him, they owe him pretty much all of the 7.25. If no team claims him, he becomes a free agent. Cleveland owes him 7.25.
When do we find out when he gets claimed?
Monday, Tuesday, I'll say.
Interesting. Yeah, I like how they did that. That was actually kind of smart.
Yeah, no, and I think the issue there, I think it might have been that because they don't want certain teams to go after him, so what they're doing is because if you look at the
I
team,
don't want like an AFC contender to go get him.
yeah, even though I think Steelers could get him, I don't know if they would.
They won't. No.
But so I think what they did was they put it in a situation where if they go to the waiver wire, I mean, Odell could always say, "I'm not reporting to your team."
Yeah,
Like they don't claim it. Like I can imagine he'll be doing that with some of the lesser teams, but it's like he made it to a point where the lesser teams are going to have they made it to the lesser teams have a chance first.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so that's where the issue is, right? So going to answer your question, it's going to be tough. I think Green Bay, I don't think he goes, even though there's big connections here. Vegas seems like a good possibility. I'm not going to expand on why there's a place a spot that opened up. We're not going that far. We're not going.
What happened? It was very unfortunate. I think that's
Yeah,
all. It
yeah,
was stupid, was what it was. But I think that's all.
yeah, yeah. So Vegas, there's a place. Um, the Rams, obviously, I could see him going to the Rams. They clearly are in an all-in window. So to me, Rams could be a place. I've seen Ravens fans say Baltimore. No, he's not going to Baltimore.
Yeah, you see? Did you see Lamar try to recruit him? I think that's
No,
fine.
He didn't recruit him. No, it wasn't recruiting. It was more so, hey, I can't do anything about it. So
I
he
don't
now
think the Ravens would go after him anyway.
and no, and then what was also interesting is that one of the Ravens former Ravens receiver Quadre Ismail basically saw quote tweeted something, and then it was something like a picture. It was saying the best place. It was a PFF saying the best place for him is Baltimore, and then Quadre Ismail said no, and then Lacey DaCosta, Eric DaCosta's wife, liked that and basically said like Quadre Ismail's response. So if the GM's wife likes that post saying bad idea, and the GM, I think she also responded saying, "I like our receivers." So they're not going after him. They don't have the cap space. They have like 1.5 million in cap space. They're also like 28th, 29th in the waiver order. And then so even if they were to, even if so, he would have to go through waivers and be a free agent for them to be interested. And even then, it's up to him. And if the options are uh, uh, the Saints with the Michael Thomas injury, the Rams, I could see him there, but
Oh,
there's just so many
yeah.
teams.
I was going to say the Saints as well. Thank God you said that. That one I think makes the most sense. But I will say this as well. Um, the the Packers,
49,
the
Packers, yeah.
Packers make a lot of sense.
Oof, yeah. Devontae, Odell, especially with Tonyan's injury.
With,
Uh,
with with stupid Aaron Rodgers there too. Okay, we're not going to go there
yeah,
either.
we're not going to go to interesting, but yeah, I mean, yeah, that makes great sense there. I mean, that would be dangerous. Like Aaron Jones and Dylan as your running backs,
Mm.
Lazard, who else? Like Lazard, Odell, and Devontae as your receivers. That's pretty good. That would cover up the loss. Rams seem like an interesting place. I'll tell you one team I think Odell should love to be in: San Francisco.
Oh yeah, that makes sense.
They got the cap space. They got the cap space for it. They have a rookie quarterback, so they know they can give him a long-term deal. And then you have uh, Odell, Brandon Ayuk, Devo Samuel with George Kittle, with Kyle Shanahan running that offense and having a mobile quarterback. I think that could make it more dangerous. And look, the 49ers, they're not contending really this year, but a lot of that's their health. Like if they were fully healthy, this is a contending team.
Yeah, I mean, but we said that I think for like the last couple of years about them. They're just so banged up.
Yeah.
Weird, Kittle, quarterback situation, wide receivers, everything. Yeah, I mean, I think if they were healthy, they would be a contender. I would say.
Yeah, and I think Odell would soften the blow of losing some of those first round picks. So to me, Seattle could also be an interesting place. Him, DK, and Lockett with Russell Wilson as the quarterback. That's not a bad place for him to
That's a
land.
good one too. Yeah.
So it seems like the NFC West is probably one of the more than likely where he'll end up, not with the Cardinals. But I think the Saints could be a good place. I'll say it's the NFC West, NFC South. One of those. I feel like he'll probably be in one of those divisions.
Yeah, I think so.
And then I'll quickly talk about the Ravens. So pretty much we're playing Vikings this week.
You should win that, I would say. I mean, they just
Yeah,
lost Cooper Rush at home. That's very embarrassing. Mike Zimmer's defense is not that good. I think Kirk Cousins is very overrated. I know you've gotten lucky in a lot of games this year,
yeah.
just with no outcomes and stuff. But you guys are a good team. There should be no luck with this one. You should be able to roll. I think the Vikings.
Yeah, I think we'll win. I think we should win. I mean, Ravens coming off the bye week have been really good past few years. We should. The offensive line has more time to gel. I think they have. Like, I think if they can. I think the big thing for them is tackling has seemed to be a bigger problem this year, and maybe it's because the NFL is making it a quarterback friendly league, and there's like defenses are so scared, are becoming scared that the wrong hit will give them a penalty. Maybe that's the reason, but the other reason is because they're trying to like create a turnover on every play when it's make the tackle when it should be make the tackle first. If you have the opportunity for a turnover, then do it. So I think that they may have gotten that message. So they should win. No Daniil Hunter, he's out for the year. No Michael Pierce. The Vikings center isn't playing because he was placed
Mhm.
on the C19 list. So pretty much he is. So they are shorthanded. Nick Boyle isn't coming back. So we'll see what they do there. It's going to be pretty interesting to see. Derek Wolfe isn't coming back yet, so the Ravens are banged up as well. They should win. I think it'll be close. I think it should be a close game because the Ravens are still shorthanded. But they have Vikings this week. They got Miami next Thursday, and then they got Chicago. And then I know you guys play Chicago, so
Yeah,
you guys.
The Steelers have a big opportunity here to go into the second half before they run the gauntlet. Their next two games at eight, the Bears, and then the game I will be at, the Lions. They're combined 3-13. Yes, I understand the Steelers will probably give their fans heart attacks over these next two games when it probably shouldn't happen. But I think if they're not 6-3 after these two, there's a problem. I mean, these two teams are not that good. I know Justin Fields he's been he's not been bad, but he's also has a lot of work I think to do as a passer. I think for sure. Great runner. The Lions aren't that good. The Bears, though, I mean, Matt Nagy's a terrible head coach. I will say this as well. I'm pretty sure Mike Tomlin has beaten every NFL team at least once, except the Bears and the Saints. I don't think he's ever beaten those two teams for as long as he's been the coach. So if he were to win this one, the only team he would not have beaten thus far um, is the Saints. I'm pretty sure. I was going division by division, and like I said, I'm pretty certain he's beaten every other team. So this will be one more to cross off. Khalil Mack is banged up. The Bears, I know Khalil Herbert, he's doing pretty well, but their receiving group is not good. Like I honestly, like at the top of my head, I can't even like name their top target, which is weird.
I mean, well, and that's a sad thing about the Bears because their top target is it should be Allen Robinson,
Yeah.
and he's a good receiver. So the fact that we don't even he can't stand out, that's on the offensive scheme. I mean, I feel bad for him because he's always been I feel like he should get more credit for being a good receiver, but the problem is who has he caught passes from? Bortles, Andy Dalton.
I don't know why he decided to go back there. Just a really stupid decision.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's regretting that. I mean,
Yeah, I mean,
it'd be
also,
pretty interesting.
I will say Chris Boswell will be back for the game. He's out of concussion protocol. The only real injured player that was in the injury report this week was Eric Ebron, but Pat Fryermuth is being used so much more anyway. Stephon Tuitt is still hurt. They come into it as mainly healthy as they can be with everyone else that's hurt, but this should be a game that they should win. They should win the next week's game before, again, man, that's the second half is when they really will be tested. I mean, those last six, I'm like screwing on my math. Those last 8 games, excuse me, are going to be really hard.
Yeah, and then we'll end with this one. Von Miller gets traded to the Rams. I think this pretty much you can rename this to. Do you think it's smart? Do you think it's smart for the Rams to go this all in for next few years?
It's tough. I mean, they think they have the quarterback to do it. They think they have the offense to do it. I mean, Cooper Kupp is having a ridiculous year. Matthew Stafford, I think, has like 23 touchdowns to 3 interceptions. They have a good running game. Their defense is pretty solid. I can 100% see them going to the Super Bowl and winning it. I mean, so I don't fault them for it, but if they don't win it this next year or two, they're literally not going to have any draft picks. So I mean,
yeah, just keep this in perspective. Like, I don't think when's their next first round draft pick? 2024 or something like that. It's almost as if they took Jared Goff with the #1 overall pick, realized how bad or how disappointing he was, and said, we don't want another first round pick for a while.
Literally. Yeah. I mean, it's like I said, it's risky, but they think they have the team for it. They have a great coach. Their offense is loaded at wide receiver. They have a quarterback who is one of the best in the league against the blitz. I think he's actually #1. They have a good running game. Jalen Ramsey is, for as much as we all like to hate on him, he's playing really good. The rest of their secondary is strong. Aaron Donald is still Aaron Donald. Their linebackers aren't bad. So the NFC has probably 4 elite teams.
But the rest are probably not so good, but compared to the AFC, which is a bunch of other teams.
Yeah. You have the Rams, you have the Bucs, you have the Cowboys, and you have the Cardinals. And then after that, indeed, it's what? I mean,
Packer? Nah, I don't know.
Obviously, the Packers. So I would say 5 elite teams. And then the rest, it's kind of meh.
Yeah, no, and I think so I think it's going to be pretty interesting. It's a risky strategy. Like, here's what I'll say. I think there's certain markets where where they won't accept a rebuild. Like, New York won't accept a rebuild.
No.
LA will not accept a rebuild.
No.
So I think that's the tricky thing. Like, it is like people who normally go to like Vegas with millions and with thousands of dollars, and they go and they are super aggressive. They're more than likely going to be the ones leaving broke by the end of the night. So I think with the Rams, they are aggressive, but I just don't see this work. I don't like. When has this strategy really worked in sports? Because
that's the thing.
Yeah, so I mean, but at the same time, if this doesn't work, you're facing a hard rebuild. If you're facing a hard rebuild, well, think about the market you're at. It's Los Angeles. They won't accept a hard rebuild. So what are you gonna do? So what are you gonna do? Send more punt on more first and second round picks? I mean, so now and then you're just setting yourself up for failure every single time. So I wasn't a big fan because I know there's a lot of Ravens fans were they were pissed at the Ravens GMs. Like, why can't the Ravens be this aggressive? Like, you guys don't realize this strategy fails most of the time. Like, the Padres haven't done anything. The Dodgers haven't done anything. Like, they had to win a championship in a 60-game season. The Yankees haven't done anything in the past 10 years.
You don't build your team by just trading all your picks. It was funny, actually, you say these kind of things. Mike Tomlin, when they released or traded Melvin Ingram, he said after, point blank, this is why we build through the draft. Flat out said that, just as like throwing shade. So, and he's right. That's what separates the great organizations from the ones that just build through free agency and all these trades. And don't get me wrong, the Rams have made a lot of great moves through with Stafford, but there comes a time where it's like, okay,
the bill comes due.
Yeah, so I want to save some of these picks.
Yeah, and so the problem is if they don't win the next couple years and you don't have first and second and third round picks, and you see Stafford's out the door, and Aaron Donald's out the door, and Jalen Ramsey's out the door.
Well, that's if they all leave. But I
Yeah,
think
yeah, like no, but you run the risk of you're so front loaded, and you're looking at a thoroughbred, and you're so front loaded.
yeah, good point.
Yeah, like you're so front loaded that if you start seeing some of those pieces start to go, you're starting to see the back of a horse's ass.
That's a
Pretty
good
much.
that's a good simile there.
Yeah, so that's the biggest problem that I have. Like, so look, hey, and they've hit on draft picks. Like Cooper Cup was a third round pick, good option. Like they've had solid options, but it's just I don't. This is going to be interesting. Hopefully, it works for them. If it doesn't, they're in a hard rebuild and they're in the wrong market for that. So it's
Yes.
going to be interesting. And then we haven't really talked Virginia Tech. Obviously,
Do we want to talk
no, we're
Virginia?
not. We're not. All I'm going to say is this: basketball season starts in a few days.
Yeah, and I will say this, he quit on the program punting in that situation last night. That's how people get fired. You
No,
quit.
yeah, he's done. I think
Yeah,
that a lot of people.
he flat out quit on his team last night. That's a quitting move.
Yeah, no, and I think that he knows he's done. I think I know people have been saying that. Well, how come Babcock hasn't done anything? I think he has.
He's
I
probably
think
getting a lot of calls.
he's calling a lot of people. He's having those backdoor discussions. He's letting Fuente know. Fuente's let the players know. And the only thing that bothers me is at this point, just throw Taj Bullock in there. Like,
I know. I
don't
mean,
put.
yeah, this is I can't watch Knox Cato, man. He's terrible.
And here's the thing: Knox Kadum wasn't the guy that they were targeting. Knox, like when you think about it, the reason why they brought in Knox Kadum was because they had like what 2, 3 quarterbacks in the transfer portal, and
Yeah.
Braxton play that year. So it's like we need a quarterback. Oh, let's go and take a guy from that was set to go to JMU. Like, and
Mhm.
then there's still and that's also another issue there with JMU because apparently JMU's trying to move to the Sun Belt Conference,
He did.
and and then the CAA pretty much said, if you do that, no spring sports for you.
That's screwed up, by the way. I don't really like that they did that.
No, and apparently that's what they're saying. And here's why it sucks because the Orioles have the #1 overall pick, and James Madison. There's an outfielder from James Madison, Chase DeLater. He's a good track record. He walks more than he strikes out. He's a big 6'4", 240 pound center fielder, 5-tool potential. He might be a favorite, and I think Prospects Live put him as the top MLB draft prospect. So
Wow.
and yeah, and this early. And so I think that this is a guy that could go #1. This guy could go in the top 5, right?
But
And then you have that guy, and you're gonna say, oh yeah, he can't play spring. So if you're JMU, that's bad because now you have a guy that could go in the top 5, but now he can't. But if there's no spring baseball, he might not, and that's gonna
yeah,
hurt recruiting. That's gonna hurt everything. I just don't get why these CAA teams just get so pissy about teams moving up. Like there
yeah,
has to be reasons.
it's BS.
Yeah, so we'll end the show on that note. We'll next week we might not. I don't think we'll record on Saturday. We'll try to record earlier. So we'll talk about it off camera about when, but we'll see you at some point next week.
Yeah, well, we will definitely be recording sometime next week.